Management buying an 80.1% stake in Chrysler for $7.4 billion. CNBC's Phil LeBeau joins us now from Chicago with the breaking details. I guess we keep forgetting that if something really good happens at Chrysler, Daimler will participate, at least with about a fifth of the company, right? Yeah,
19.9%. And initially, Daimler Chrysler also gets about $1.35 billion. And I know what you're going to say, Joe. You paid $39 billion. You're just getting $1.3 billion. You got to be disappointed with that. But I think Dieter Zetsche will take it, and particularly because the investors in Europe have been clamoring for this for some time. Take a look at what's happening with shares of Daimler Chrysler, up about 8% today. When you look at this, this is a case where this marriage just never worked to the degree that the people in Stuttgart thought it would work. And I think after 9 years, they're happy to be rid of Chrysler.
Phil, Andrew Sorkin here. What do you think these Cerberus guys know that we don't? We think that these guys are so smart. You go back and look at the GMAC deal that they put together a little over a year now, and GMAC didn't do so well last quarter either in account of the mortgages situation. What do you think these guys are going to do to make this thing work?
Well, one thing that they're looking at and they're very excited about is the possibility if you take Chrysler Financial, which is small compared to GMAC, Andrew, but if you take Chrysler Financial, put that together with the 51% of GMAC, you've got a real nice financial institution, particularly when it comes to auto lending. So you've got that there. On the Chrysler side, they're not going to do anything in the foreseeable future, and I'm talking about 5-6 months down the road. There's already a turnaround plan in place. But remember, Wolfgang Bernhard is one of the people who put this deal together for Cerberus. He used to be the COO at Chrysler. Tom Lasorda was in charge of manufacturing underneath Bernhard. He understands the company. He understands the potential there as well as where they can make further cuts and be more aggressive. I think even though he's not going to take an executive role, I think you look at Bernhard and Bob Ruhe, who used to be in charge of sales for Ford, both of them are going to be much more aggressive in trying to turn things around for Chrysler.
Well, we'll see. Andrew has actually, Phil, do your math.
Phil, here's another question. We're using the $7.4 billion headline figure, and then independently of that, we're also using the fact that Daimler Chrysler is saying that they're getting $1.35 billion.
Right.
But by my math, there's two other things going on. One is the Daimler's lending to Cerberus about $400 million. And then in addition to that, in terms of the time this deal takes to close, they're going to be putting out another $1.6 billion. So when it all comes out in the wash, it looks like they've actually paid effectively $650 million to get rid of this asset as opposed to actually take cash and put it on their balance sheet.
Well, you're right. But they'll come back and they'll say, listen, those loans there doesn't mean that we're putting it. But you're right, Andrew. I mean, they are paying at the end of the day to get rid of this company. And that's the kicker in all of this. When you pay $39 billion, and at the end of the 9 years of marriage, this is what you come away with by paying a little bit of money. Not a good deal. But I think Dieter Zetsche had no choice. He had to do this.
All right, Phil, thank you very much. We'll check back in with you in about half an hour again, learning more about this deal as we go through the course of the morning. Right now, it's time to put together our trading block.
By the way, Mr. Lasorda will remain CEO of Chrysler once it officially is spun off and becomes part of Chrysler Holding LLC. Let me explain how this deal goes down and the breakup of Chrysler. Chrysler Corp will be part of Chrysler Holding. Chrysler Holding, for $7.4 billion, Cerberus will take an 80.1% stake in the company. 19.9% will be retained by Daimler Chrysler. So if they can fix Chrysler and it suddenly goes to the moon and becomes extremely profitable, then Daimler Chrysler will share in those profits as well. For Dieter Zetsche, well, this is the best of both worlds, because even though he's only getting $1.3 billion, and we've talked with Andrew about this, that after some loans and a few other figures, they're actually paying some money to get rid of Chrysler. He benefits from the fact that they get Chrysler off the books. They get rid of $19 billion in liabilities. Investors in Europe are cheering this move. They've been pressuring him to do this for some time. Shares there up more than 7% today. For Tom Lasorda, well, this is an interesting period coming up here. He remains CEO of the company. They will be turning around the company, but clearly Cerberus is at the wheel here. The pro here for Cerberus, they will get Chrysler Financial, which they compare with their 51% ownership of GMAC, but the con, the $19 billion in liabilities. And again, there you see shares of Daimler Chrysler. They got a decent pop in Europe this morning. I expect the same thing when trading begins here. And for Joe and Becky, what you need to keep in mind here is that Wolfgang Bernhard is one of the people who drove this deal for Cerberus. He was the right-hand man for Dieter Zetsche when they turned around Chrysler back in 2000. I'm sure he'll have a lot to say about what happens with Chrysler's future once Cerberus takes control here. Guys, back to you.
I don't know if you can see that that tape we're running, Phil, or not, but we got your guy Wolfgang there in front of a car that they ought to make. What is that thing? Why don't they make that thing? I want to buy it. What is that?
It was a concept car. It was going to go 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. And I'm trying to remember. I think it was called the ME4. Oh, it's a rocket on wheels. Everybody wanted him to make that. And that's, you know, that was very emblematic when Wolfgang Bernhardt was there of his style. He's a hard pushing Cerberus's agenda.
All right, Phil. Melissa Lee's here. Cerberus, you got a guy there that used to sign all of our currency, so that gives him a little currency, right, John Snow? Is he an operating guy too there? Do you think, or he's more of the head, sort of the
He's the head, and I'm sure
head?
that he lends his operating experience from his experience at CSX, not just signing checks.
Yeah,
and signing currency.
And looking important up on that. Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
Wow, there's John. There's a treasury secretary.
Run a railroad, you know, that really,
that's true.
That's tremendous operating experience. And this morning, and we'll likely hear these comments echoed in the news conference in Stuttgart, Germany, Cerberus's chairman John Snow saying in a statement that the firm believes in the inherent strength of the U.S. manufacturing industry as well as the U.S. auto industry, and that's not just lip service, because Cerberus has actually been loading up on auto industry assets as well as an auto industry expertise. In fact, a couple of top guns recently hired from the industry who are well regarded as hard-charging, cost-cutting managers will be key to making this deal work, as Phil LeBeau had just mentioned. One of them is David Thursfield. He's now a senior member in Cerberus's automotive and industrial practice. He joined Ford back in 2002. He cut costs, but he didn't make many friends there with suppliers or, for that matter, with Ford's then COO. Thursfield retired in 2004. He joined Cerberus that month. And we were talking at length about Wolfgang Bernhardt. He is seen as a clincher to making this deal work. In fact, he's relatively new to Cerberus, but was, as Phil mentioned, a high-ranking exec at both Chrysler and Mercedes-Benz. After Daimler, Bernhardt worked at Volkswagen and had been considered a candidate to run that company until he was forced out this year, later joining Cerberus. Now, Bernhardt, with his inside operations knowledge of Chrysler, is expected to play a major role in this deal. He is well regarded among the ranks and has a track record of taking the axe to cut costs. But it's not just Bernhardt that makes Cerberus a logical private equity buyer. In fact, there could be synergies to joining Chrysler's financial arm with Cerberus's 51% stake in GMAC, the former financing arm.
Higher up around 85 after being around 82, and I think that should put the shares at a close to a new high. Yeah, it will be a new high if it trades up at 85.18. The old high was 84.90. CNBC's Phil LeBeau has been listening in on the Daimler Chrysler news conference and has some more details. I just want to know, are they going to start making that car we keep showing, Phil? That's my question.
The ME4? No, that's not going to be made anytime soon.
What'd you hear?
I doubt that it'll ever be made,
I
Joe.
know.
But you would love to ride anything that goes 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds, wouldn't you?
I would.
You know, I have been listening in on the press conference going on in Stuttgart, Germany, and a couple of interesting comments. One reporter asked Dieter Zetsche, well, let me understand why you still think that there are some synergies between these two companies, and yet you sold them. And Zetsche said, well, yeah, there's still some synergies there, but we don't have to worry about the downside anymore if these liability issues continue to percolate at Chrysler. So clearly that was one of the things that they wanted to get rid of, the $19 billion that was hanging around their neck in terms of pension and health care liabilities. John Snow with Cerberus has been asked a number of questions about whether or not Cerberus can work with the UAW. He's sticking to the script so far and saying, listen, they've come out this morning and they've given their blessing to this sale. We think we have a good relationship with the UAW. Somebody brought up the fact that the UAW and Cerberus have yet to work out a deal on Delphi. Remember, that's part of Delphi coming out of bankruptcy. And he said, well, your characterization that we can't get along with these guys is erroneous. You know, we have a good relationship with the UAW. I think later this year, Joe, in the summertime, when we have the negotiations over the next contract, we'll see how good those relationships are between Cerberus and the UAW, because it could be fairly contentious.
Yeah, undoubtedly. Well, you know, Phil, it's going to be interesting. Do you have any... who would you put in if Lasorda was gone? Who would you bring in? I guess we're not going to put in the guy from Nissan anymore.
Well, I'm turned around the company with Zetsche.
That Lasorda has, or that Cerberus has, that's different from what we've seen. You know, now that you have Daimler Chrysler still owning a stake in this business, I assume they obviously have a major motive to make sure that this works not only for Cerberus but for themselves.
They haven't said anything aside from we believe in Chrysler and Tom Lasorda's turnaround plan. But you know, Andrew, they have to be looking at this and saying, okay, what's our time frame?
Star Wars led the way. Now every spike...